Hello, and welcome to Rolling Out Meet the Author. I'm your host, Kimberly Amara, and today I'm speaking with Sophia A. Nelson. She is an award-winning author, journalist, and university scholar, adjunct professor in Virginia. Sophia is also a USA Today columnist, and she's also a contributing editor to thegrio.com, as well as a contributor to the Washington Post. So she has been very busy. You can see her regularly on MSNBC, CNN, and PBS as a legal and political analyst. She was most recently a scholar in residence and adjunct professor in the Department of Philosophy and Religion at Christopher Newport University. You are also a former investigative counsel to the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Oversight and Reform and a senior counsel with the international law firm of Holland and Knight. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. And so you are also, which is why we have you on the show today, you are also an author of 3 other nonfiction books, Black Woman Redefined, The Woman Code, and E Pluribus One, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so welcome. I'm super excited. I met you earlier and I must go ahead and tell everyone I'm going to read it, but this is the new book. I hope you guys can see it. It's not too blurry, but we are going to be discussing the new book, Be the One You Need, 21 Life Lessons I Learned While Taking Care of Everyone But Me.
Yes. You know, let me say to your audience before we get started, please forgive my sunglasses. I'm in Texas. It's super hot and I had to go outside so that I could do this interview. Forgive me for the noise.
I understand.
And I want to make this work out, and they put me out the house and threw me in the backyard. So
hey, listen, I just came from outside. It's
hot. It's hot.
It's like 108. It's hot. Okay.
I think it's 127. I don't know. It's bad. I don't know how y'all live like this, but okay.
Okay. So even though obviously your bio is phenomenal, people should have an idea of who you are. I do want to take just a second for you to just, for those who are not familiar with you, tell us, who you are and how you even got to, the career that you have today. Just briefly tell us about yourself.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you to you. Thank you for attending the tea today that was put together by my sorority sisters and friends in the Dallas metro area. It was wonderful, particularly since I gave everyone a day notice that I was coming from Louisiana and I was just going to drive on over to Texas. But Rolling Out is someone, a magazine that has done many interviews with me in the past. I'm very familiar with your publication. You do great work. And so it's always my honor and my privilege to speak to your audience and to support the good things that you do for our community. About me a little bit, I think the intro that you gave says it all. By background, by trade, I'm an attorney. I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, no stranger to Texas. And like I said, Houston and Dallas and the Rolling Out community. And, this 4th book, Be the One You Need, I think couldn't be more timely. I didn't plan it this way, but sometimes things work out that way. This was supposed to be a book that was supposed to be published much earlier this year, but events being what they are, it ended up being a summer book. And I feel like it couldn't have happened at a better time because we are all in this place right now, Kim, where we are really, I think, struggling with how to protect ourselves from what's still a pandemic where we're seeing surges yet again, whether we wear masks, whether we don't. The politics of our time are very divisive. The politics of our day are coarse. Our communication with one another as human beings is aggrieved. It's angry. We have violence all around us all the time. None of us is immune from the violence that can happen at our grocery store, at our church, at a 4th of July picnic, at schools where our babies go and at high schools, and everywhere we look now, we are being, I think, overwhelmed with angst and fear and worry. And a lot of us are feeling it, all of us, male and female alike. This book has touched people from all walks of life, which is exactly what you hope happens. But for me, the message is really simple. It's you taking care of you first. Okay. You doing what the airline stewardess tells you every time you get on a plane. Put your mask on first. And the reason that she says that is because If you lose oxygen, you can't help your children get their vest on. You can't help your elderly parent or your spouse. You are no good to anyone else. Sisters, let me talk to you for a moment. You are no good to anybody else if you get sick, if you aren't well, if you fall apart emotionally, if you have a breakdown. If you take care of yourself and you nurture yourself and you put you at the top of your list every day, you have more to give. You are happier. You are fuller. You're a more accessible and approachable human being. You're not exhausted. You're not angry. You're not tired. You're not frustrated and snapping at everybody, which is what happens, by the way, when we don't take care of ourselves. So that's why I wrote the book. That's why I wrote it now, because the national moment that we're in, the global moment, calls for us to return to self, to get still, to take care of me, to honor the things I need so that I can be much better to engage my fellow human beings. That's really kind of the sum of what this book is about.
Okay, so then let me ask you, because you touched on a lot right there. And so thank you for, answering one of my questions, which was, kind of like the inspiration and the motivation behind why you wrote the book. So I want to also ask you though, there's multiple things that I can think of, but definitely what do you really think is contributing to just like this emotional intelligence decline? We're definitely kind of siloed off. Even like I think about social media, and like they've done studies where, my feed is slanted towards, maybe like specifically Democrat or conservative or whatnot. And so it's like we all have like these silos where I think like this, and because I think like this is right. And if you don't think like that, then there's something that is like wrong with you on a cellular level, right? And so when we think about just emotional intelligence, and then when you add in that mental well-being component, right? How does this book really kind of fit in, right? What do you think?
Well, you've asked a lot there, but let me take it apart like this. We talked about this at the tea, as you know, and I know that you were able to get some video from that maybe you can share. But there are 3 points I think that are important. Number one, if you look at studies that Microsoft has done, and I'll use Microsoft for the moment because they've done a lot of studies about the human attention span. Mm-hmm. And when I was an 18-year-old, way back in the dark ages of 1986, we didn't have phones. There were no computers. There was none of that. We got communicated to by direct mail, through the mail, the television, the telephone. That was it. And the human attention span back in the dark ages of 1985 was about a minute and a half. Fast forward to the year 2022, Microsoft says the human attention span now, because of the advent of devices and social media, is about 8 to 12 seconds. Take a moment and just process that it contributes to our everything's thumb thugging, like I like to call it thumb thugs, right? People just say all kind of foolishness with their thumbs. But it also means that I don't even have the capacity anymore to really engage another human being in a serious or deep conversation, because my brain is wired now to get through it, to move fast.
Right.
And so that automatically cuts off human dialogue, right? Because if I can only have 8 to 12 seconds to look at something, to see something, to respond to something, that's a real problem. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is that our politics, Donald John Trump changed everything. It is 100 years from now, when historians look back, they will say that if America doesn't make it, and I'm worried at this point, and I'm being very sober when I say that as a professor and as a scholar and someone who writes about these things. If we don't make it, I believe they will say the decline started in 2015 with the coarseness of our politics. And this man who came on the scene, someone who had been in our public consciousness for decades as a mogul, as a casino owner, as a realtor, but he was always off the charts, a wild card playboy guy. He comes in and he says to people, say what you want, talk how you want. You can call Hispanics bad names. You can talk about blacks. You can talk about S-hole countries. You can say you're going to grab women by the pee and all these things, and there'll be no consequence. So what he basically did was give people permission to say the stuff they think about and they want to say, but decorum and respect and values and the way we used to conduct ourselves says you don't talk to people like that. You don't do that. That no longer exists. So everything's been ripped off now. And then the third part is we're in tribes. We're tribal now. It's the Republican tribe, the Democrat tribe, the conservative tribe, the liberal tribe, the pro-choice tribe, the pro-life tribe. Everything we do is you got to pick a side.
Yeah.
And if it means I have to pick on a side and I have to be stuck on a side, guess what? That means that anybody who's not on my side is my enemy. They're not an adversary. They're not someone that I debate or dialogue with. There's someone that I want removed. There's someone that I don't want to see. There's someone that's evil. And when we group ourselves like that, a democracy, a liberal democracy, a republic, which America is, can't stand because we have too many diverse people. We're not a monolith like Sweden or like other cultures or in Middle Eastern countries where they don't have a lot of diversity racially or even religious wise, right? Here we do. And that's why you have a lot of people all over the place, because we're not the same. E pluribus unum, out of many one. The founding vision of this country was that people would not agree. They didn't have to always see things the same way, but that we would find one core set of values, and that is respect for our institutions, respect for the court, respect for the presidency, respect for when an election is won and you lose, you concede. You don't lie and say that people stole it from you and then try to have an insurrection at the Capitol, right? And that's where we're headed. So again, this book fits into how we're thinking about our lives, how we're thinking about how we value self and other people. And I think that because people aren't taking care of themselves, because our social media and our way of dialogue, we ghost people, we unfriend, we block, we delete, we hit reply to all, we put people on blast, we shame them. If that's the way you're operating, that's a tough way to live.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, piggybacking off of that, my next question obviously is going to be, as a reader of people that are interested or finding themselves where they're like just shaking their head, nodding their head like, yes, what can they expect from Be the One You Need?
So in the prologue of the book, which I really encourage everybody to read, you can read it. I think you can probably get it online at Amazon. They usually let you have a sneak peek at the book. If you can read the prologue, read it, because, or how to use this book. And I say that because, there are three questions, as you know, that the book is centered around. And the book is centered around three core questions about yourself that we don't ever really ask ourselves, particularly not as women, particularly not as Black women or women of color. And even our men, I believe, understand that something is amiss, like something is not right, like we're just not connecting the right way as people. And the three questions are this: what do I want? What do I need? And how am I feeling? Three core questions. And the more you think about those questions, they're going to disturb you at first. They're going to make you uncomfortable at first because you're not used to asking yourself what you want. You're not used to asking yourself what you need, particularly if you're a female, again, and you're a mother, you're a caretaker, you're used to putting everybody else above you. And while that's noble, it's a quick way to drop dead of a heart attack, of a stroke, to be unhealthy, to be unhappy, to be irritable, to be pissy, to be just a not nice person. Because when our needs are not being met, our needs, and all of us has a need to be loved, all of us has a need to be connected, not this device stuff. I'm talking about true relational, not transactional connection. When you sit in that space and you begin to actually deal with what your desires are, your hopes are, how am I feeling? Am I exercising? Do I have 40 extra pounds on my body that I picked up over COVID? Did I stop connecting with my friends? Did I stop traveling? What can I do to get myself back on course where I'm engaging and living? Yeah. And I think a lot of people have checked out and they're isolated. This is why we have 988 now, which is great, that you can call and like 911 dial 988 and you can get help for mental health crises. Because a lot of people, the Fortune 100, have signed a pledge with SHRM, the largest HR organization in the world, for mental health and wellness of their employees, because it's huge. And everybody saw it tip over. It was there, but then COVID came and ripped the Band-Aid off.
It did.
And then everybody was like, oh, wow, we got to deal with this. So it's real.
So now, and this kind of, again, in line with what you just said, because that's important. The mental health component is important. How do we take care of the mental health and wellness in the midst of everything. And I know that's really one of the key components of what you try to address in this book. And I think that's important that you point out those three questions, because especially for women, but Black women specifically, we really don't think about those three things. So would you say that that's a starting place?
Well, I think the starting place is here, Kim. At the starting place is you have to first, I grew up in an alcoholic home, as you know, from reading the book and from my talk today. And one of the first things I did when I got to college at all of 18 years old was after I got my books, my grandfather took me to campus, and I saw a Black professor, Dr. Hayes, who I'm still close to this day. And I said, "Do you know what Al-Anon is?" And he said, "Well, yes, I do." And he said, "Is that something you need?" And I said, "Yes, I read about it and I heard about it, and I need to go to this group because I hear this is the group for families to go to, and I don't want to turn out like that." I share that story, and I went for many years because I knew that what I experienced in my household and my family was not normal. It was not okay. It was not godly. I was going to church one day and being thrown out the house the next, or being yelled at and cussed at, and having violent things going in our home that were not consistent with anything that was good or decent or godly. And I share that story to say this. One of the first things they teach you in Alcoholics Anonymous or Al-Anon is the first step is to admit you have a problem.
Right.
Listen to me on this now. It's important. The first step is to admit you have a problem. We as Black women specifically, but women more broadly, and our men as well, do not like to admit when we have a mental health challenge, or when we're not emotionally okay, or when we're about to crack up and lose our minds. Running around saying, "I'm too blessed to be stressed," and you're about to crack up and lose your mind. Stop doing that. Stop lying to yourself. Stop trying to press stuff down and be Superwoman or Superman with a cape when you're about to break apart. And the first step, before you can get to those three questions that I've asked you to ask yourself, is, am I okay? Like, am I really dealing with the fact that I got some stuff, some trauma, some stuff I need to work through? You got to get there first. And I think that the 988 and the way we're talking about this now, and the way that you have celebrities coming forward and people like me who have big platforms saying, "Hey, I've been there. I've been depressed. I've been down. I had COVID. I struggled, whatever. It's real. It's okay." The more you can talk about it, the more you can get it up and out. That's when you can get to those questions of, what do I want from my life? What do I need? What need is deep. I gave the analogy of the Titanic, and what sunk Titanic wasn't the tip of the iceberg that they saw. They saw that in time, but they turned that boat. What was beneath is what destroyed Titanic and sunk Titanic in 2 hours. That's the same with us. That stuff that we've submerged, that stuff that we're not dealing with, that stuff that we don't want to feel and talk about, that is what sinks us. That is what breaks us. That is what destroys our marriages, our families, our homes, our careers, our hopes, our dreams, and our desires. It's the stuff we refuse to deal with. And a lot of us live that way.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy. So you have to look at self-care as a holistic, emotional, mental, spiritual, physical journey that you take with you. It's not about what other people do, Kim. It's not about whether other people are doing the right things or the wrong things, or treating you right or not. It's about how you feel about you. It's about how you teach people to treat you. It's about you.
Okay. And so now, Sophia, I'm hearing you, and it sounds like you've done, like, this is obviously, it's a journey, but you've been doing the work along the way. So with that being said, and you are vulnerable in the book, you're obviously vulnerable right now. Was it challenging? Because I know, like, we talk about vulnerability, and that can be so challenging and really leave a lot of people stuck, right? Because they can't just seem to get over that hump. So when you found yourself writing this book, was it even a challenge because you have been doing the work, or did you still find where you were kind of having some moments where it was like, oof?
Well, you were there when Pastor Renee Hornbuckle got up, and she brought everybody to attention to talk about the book. And one of the things she said that humbled me, coming from her who's been through so much, is you were very brave in this book, and you were very vulnerable. Yeah. Two things. Brave is, yes, always me. I will jump off the cliff and be like, I'm a fly, or I'm a sink, or I'm a swim, something. I'm good. But vulnerable as a Black woman is not something we're allowed to be.
True.
We are socialized to be hard, to be tough, to be strong, to take care of everybody else but ourselves. And that is why so many of us lead, I think, lives that are just not. I think sometimes we succeed really well on the surface. We have great jobs, great careers, great degrees, but I don't know that we live lives of deep fulfillment and happiness and joy, because I think we spend a lot of our lives taking care of other people. So being vulnerable was something I needed to work on and do. And I was very intentional that I have a big platform. People see me, they know me, they read my books, they see me on TV. And I wanted to rip the Band-Aid off and say, let me just go on and say this stuff to you. Let me just tell you, this is who I really am. And this is my journey. And if I can talk about this and I can be vulnerable, because people say all kind of horrible, hateful things to you. People, not everybody wants to see you win. Not everybody likes your book. People go on and give you a 1-star rating and never read your book, girl. They just do nasty things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to have a thick skin. But being vulnerable, I think, is when people connect the greatest. When we allow ourselves as women and as men, and men really struggle with vulnerability, right? That's like kryptonite to men. They're way worse than we are with this. But allowing yourself to be vulnerable is where you really discover the magic in your life. It's really where you uncover your greatness. Because the moment you stop carrying the bricks, the moment you stop lugging the garbage of your family's past, of the generational curses, of the abuse, sexual and otherwise, the moment you can unload that stuff in a healthy way and off ramp that stuff and learn how to talk to yourself with love and learn how to like yourself and learn how to say, that wasn't your fault. You didn't do it. That wasn't you. That wasn't your fault that someone abused you. It wasn't your fault that you were run out of your house as a child. It wasn't your fault. But that doesn't have to be your story. That's a part of your story, but that doesn't have to be how your story ends. And I think that it's so important that so many people, I think, who have gifts to give us that are amazing, we never see them, because like you said, they can't get over that hump of, I can't talk about this. I'm not allowed to talk about this, or no one's going to love me, or no one's going to like me because they've listened to some garbage somebody told them a long time ago that they were to this or to that and not enough of this and not enough of that. And that's where we get broken. And that vulnerability, and Brene Brown talks about this a lot, vulnerability, and that she's built her whole kind of methodology on this concept of vulnerability. It opens your doors. It gives you lift to the wings. It really does. It makes a difference. And you can breathe easier. You can sleep better at night too.
Okay. And so I did want to ask you, in just writing this particular piece of work, did you have any new revelations? Like, did you find where you kind of elevated, or you found new things that maybe you want to or need to work on, even though like you've come so far? But talk to me about that.
Look, absolutely. I think, and again, I open with this in the early parts of the book, but I open with the family, and I tell you to get out of their box. And again, so many of us, some people out there are blessed with amazing families, and they're loving and they're kind and they're good, and God bless them. I'm happy that you had that. But keep living. Life will deal you cards. Hard things will happen. It's just life. But if you came from a challenging family, I think the thing I discovered was that I am not my family, and I don't have to be part of a generational curse. I don't have to be an alcoholic. I don't have to be a gossip. I don't have to be a hater, whatever word you come up with. That doesn't have to be me. And so the big revelation for me was understanding that just because people are in your family doesn't mean they get to abuse you, mistreat you, mislabel you, gaslight you, whatever it is. But that we do have a responsibility as human beings to tell people when they've hurt us, to tell people when the things they're doing aren't working for us. And I think everybody deserves the opportunity to course correct if they choose to. If they don't, that's not on me. And there are members of my family who I have nothing to do with anymore, but I can say unequivocally, as God is my witness, that I did everything possible for years to try to be there, to try to hope that they got better, or they were different, or that they would change. But a girlfriend of mine said something to me, Dr. Jackson. I talked about her at the tea a little bit. She's a therapist, and she's been helping my family with stuff for years. she said to me, about my relationship with my father in particular. She said, I've watched you for years try to repair that, fix that, reach out, include him. And she said, and I want to tell you with love, I don't think that's good for you.
Mm.
And she said, and I'll tell you why, because it's not reciprocal. And that's not okay. You're an amazing daughter. Any man would have his chest stuck out to have you as his child. He would bend over backwards to let you know that he loved you and valued you. And what she was teaching me was just more another layer of knowing my value and knowing my worth, that just because someone is your parent doesn't mean they get to mistreat you or write crap on you, or not even that deep, just not even know who you are, not ever say I'm proud of you, but just like to be there when the glory's going on, but never there for the hardships of how it and what it took to get there. And so we don't have to, we can untie, we don't have to cut, we don't have to hate, we don't have to go off on people. There just comes a point when probably your silence is the best thing you can do, and you just live your life and you pray for those folks and you wish them well. But you have to break the pattern, Kim, of unhealthy, toxic relationships. And I don't agree, as I talk about in the book, this new generation, young people, I'm talking about millennials and younger. The data is disturbing. How many millennials or younger are estranged from their families? The parent didn't take them to the soccer game, or they weren't around enough, or maybe they yelled at them when they were 16. And there's this like, oh, I had a bad parent. No, you did not have a bad parent. You had a parent who was working 2 jobs and loved you and did their best. And maybe they didn't get it right, but they cut them off. They don't invite them to weddings. Some of these people haven't seen their grandchildren. And I do some research and some data on this. Was really disturbing. Back to your first question, which is, we're in a cutoff, short attention span. I'm not dealing with you. I'm going to text you something crazy culture. And it is starting to infest in our families now. It's causing very real damage that's bad. It's bad.
So I've got a couple more questions and I'll let you go, but
I'm here. You got
I'm glad that you brought that up. So, because I mean, as a community, obviously, Black people, but that definitely is an issue just with the younger generation. Because I feel like, one of the biggest things that I feel like is that there's a succession plan, right? So
there used to be.
Right, exactly. There used to be. So I can't go forward. I can't know how if I was never shown or told how, right? So the blueprint somewhere got lost in translation.
Yep.
How do we, because I know specifically at the brunch, especially with the younger ladies that were there, I know you specifically, like you pay particular attention to them. And I thought that was beautiful because that's necessary, right? Because so many, especially Black women, don't have that. They're just, seems to just be like, almost like it was lost. And so I feel like this book obviously would help with that, or at least start that conversation. But just in your own words, your own advice, how do we just try to get back to some type of semblance of just showing like, hey, this is not the direction we need to be going in as a community?
One of the life lessons, as you know, is manners matter. Manners matter. Now, people will say to me, what does that got to do with self-care? Well, I'll tell you, it has everything to do with self-care. Because how you treat people is a demonstration of how you feel about yourself, how you talk to people, how you respect people, how you honor people. If you're popping off at people all the time and you're angry all the time and you're going in on folks and cussing folks out and road rage and all that, you need some help. You're not okay. You're not doing okay. You're not feeling okay. But when I was coming up, and again, I'm 55 years old, I'm a Gen Xer, it different world. And when my parents were coming up, even more so, manners, respect of your teachers, of your elders. You couldn't even be in the room with adults when they were talking. There were rules that were understood. When your mom and dad told you something, you did it. There was none of this why, or I'm not going to be your maid. One of my friends told me, one of the kids told me, I'm not your maid. And she was like, excuse me? All the stuff Dad and I give you and do, and we ask you to pick something up and it's a fight. I share a story in the book, in the first chapter about my eldest niece who I adore, and my nieces were like my children because I couldn't have children. And, talked about how when she was 16, there was some argument over some social media thing. Some boy was doing something. We were like, hey, you can't do that. That's not safe. Went off, gets into this thing. And when you try to correct them, now you're abusing them. And I didn't even lay hands on it. I would have had hands laid on me. I would have been put down, right? For just looking at somebody wrong. And so what I'm saying is there's been this generational shift where, again, this generation has been empowered by us as their elders to be disrespectful and we're not talking about child abuse. We all know what child abuse looks like. That's unacceptable. I'm talking about basic respect of just listening to what your parents tell you because you're in their house, you're under their roof, you're under their stewardship, and you should respect and honor them. That's biblical. And I'm talking about maybe we've given them too much license to have opinions and to say things that at a stage where they're still learning, where their brains aren't even fully formed to their 20. I don't think we've done the right thing. And I think we have negated and neglected the tribe that existed when I was a girl. My grandmother would say something, then my mother would reinforce it, then one of my aunts would say something. And I was listening because I was learning and I was respectful. I never would have thought of speaking crazy to one of my aunts or something because I know I'd get in trouble. I wouldn't even talk crazy to a lady down the street because that wouldn't have been okay. So we've broken down that family structure, that community structure, that church structure, that particularly in the Black community is critical. And we've empowered these young people to feel themselves and be themselves and express themselves. We have generational shifts. We have demographic shifts. We now have shifts in gender and sexuality and things that when I was a kid, there was no LGBTQ plus, didn't exist. I mean, I'm sure it existed, but we didn't talk about it. Right. It wasn't, and please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we shouldn't talk about those things. We should. But what I'm saying is that there's a lot coming at us now, 24/7, information overload. You can't say this about this group. You can't have this feelings about that thing. You can't do this. Nobody can keep up. And it ends up being a real mess like what we have right now.
Wow. Well, I mean, you just summed it up eloquently. I mean, because we got a lot going on.
We do. And I think that if you can do one thing that I promise you can do, folks watching, is you can take care of you. You can treat yourself better. You can give yourself a little rest. You're entitled to a life too. You're entitled to love too. You're entitled to a little peace and a little joy too. All that we pour out, particularly again as Black women and our brothers, and I think our brothers are in deep trouble because they have their suicide rates, their rates of depression, their rates of violence and anger. We see it play out every day, right? They don't even have the words and the ability to know, like we talked about at the outset, how do I even begin to manage these feelings I have or how I don't feel or whatever. Right. And we have to give people the tools. And so that's what I try to do in this book. I'm trying to give you some tools. Some of it's common sense. Some of it just requires you to stop and think and value yourself enough to say, I don't want to mess my life up. I get one. I want to do better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that right there, you said a mouthful just with that. I don't know that people understand even that concept. So it is scary when you think of it. And so I'm glad that we have this opportunity to just kind of put these things out in the open because it is okay to not be okay. And I think the pandemic, if one thing I think that I noticed personally is that coping skills expire. And so sometimes you have to get some new ones. And that may require you to go see a therapist or licensed professional, whatever you need to do in order that you can, practice and get some new ones that can better serve you. So I appreciate you and for just giving me a copy of this book because I think it's great.
Well, thank you for coming out today. I think it's good for journalists like yourself to be able to actually sit in a social setting and to see people when they're not just on doing an interview and see how they interact with other human beings, how they treat other human beings. I think I want to be a model of light. God knows I'm not perfect, but I do try to practice what I preach and live a life that's of value to somebody, including myself. So thank you. thank you again to Rolling Out. You guys are fabulous. Keep doing the great work you do. You do good work, and just thank you.
Now, last question. What is next for Miss Sophia Nelson?
I think there's a lot of things that's next. One of my dearest friends, Mika Brzezinski, Morning Joe, she's, of course, one of my book endorsers, did the Forward to Woman Code, the paperback. Mika has done a really neat thing that I think has given life to women 50 and up. And she's got this project called 50 Over 50. It's Forbes and a partnership with Know Your Value, which is her brand. And she focuses only on women 50 and up. And I had no idea, Kim, how many amazing women there are in this country right now, from the military to science and math to academia to industry to corporate to ministry to you name it, that are running stuff. I mean, running circles around stuff at not just 50, 60, 65, 70. The Speaker of the House is 82, and she's fabulous, right? And I think I answered your question with that to lead into my message to young women is this, that there's a long runway now that didn't exist when my mother was a girl or when her mother was a girl, because you were considered old by 40 back then. You game over, right? You had to have your babies by a certain age. You were done by 40. Now we see the most amazing women on the covers of magazines, Michelle Obama, Helen Mirren, women, Sophia Loren, my namesake, who's still beautiful at 90 years old. And the next for me, the good news is at 55, a lot of people are winding down and thinking about retirement stuff. Not me. I'm getting ready to ramp up. There may be political office in my future, as we talked about. I don't really want to get into that until I make a decision about that, but I promise when I do, I'll talk to you. I think our country needs different leadership right now. Our country needs compassionate leadership right now. Our country needs bold leadership right now. Our country needs younger leadership right now. I think God bless them, but when you 70, 75, 80 years old, still in the Senate, in the Congress, you've overstayed your welcome. It's time for young people, yes, to get in, and to people who've lived some life. I've been in industry, I've run businesses and run them well. I don't like people whose only job has been just government their whole entire life. They've been the mayor, then they've been the congressman, then they've been the senator, then the governor, okay, that's great. But how did you feed your family? Like, did you go out and earn a living? Or you just got this thing you did forever? What do you know about what the average man or woman experiences? And inflation right now is really hard. If you're a working person right now, you're struggling. It's hitting the Black community disproportionately hard. The food prices, the gas prices, right? And so we need people in not just office, running our companies, running our localities. We need people with real life experience that actually know how to treat people well in these positions. So I think that I'm thinking about that. There are more books. There are 2 more that we're looking at now. Like my agent's already got 2 more we're looking at for, probably 24 publication in 26. But I got a long runway. I don't know when I'm going to slow down. At some point I will, but not anytime soon. So okay. I'm looking forward to what's next.
And I am definitely looking forward to what's next. And I will definitely be on the phone like, okay, hey, I need to bring her back in so I can talk to her.
You got it. I promise.
Okay. Well, for sure, before you go, the book for our audience, I know for a fact it is currently available on blackbookstore.com. I know you can get a copy of it at Amazon. But where else?
Walmart, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. It's everywhere books are sold. It's a bestseller. It's done great. It is in People magazine this week, as you know, is the featured self-help pick for new books. That is a big honor. Very humbling indeed. And I'm just humbled by this and of all the support. And I couldn't do it without people like the media and the people who buy my books and follow me. So thank you. You can follow me at I am Sophia Nelson on all my platforms.
Okay, I was just about to say, tell us how we can keep up with you, but you just did that. Okay.
All right.
All right.
All right, Kim.
I thank you so much for your time. And guys, I've just talked to, I'm so sorry here, Miss Sophia Nelson, and I am your host again, Kimberly Amara, and you've just been here with me and Miss Sophia Nelson at Meet the Author. So you have a great day. Stay cool, because I know it's hot.
I'm going to go jump in the pool.
Go back inside and put get out the hot heat.
Okay, Kim, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.